What you're looking at right here, boy, it sure raises a lot of questions, right? I mean, you think, okay, did they think this clearly? Did they think this through clearly? I think this is the classic, if your friend jumps off a bridge, or in this case, off a gigantic boulder cliff, wearing a sugar glider styled suit, would you do it too? Anyway, I like this picture because it brings up a lot of questions, and questions is what this lesson is about. We're going to take each piece of the scientific method or science inquiry, and we're going to break it down and focus in on them one at a time so that we thoroughly understand how to do each step. So in your notes, draw a line underneath your last entry and title these notes The Question. The question, and you could also title it Step 1 if you're so inclined. And like always, I suggest that you date it, not going to force you to do it. All right. Oh, just a little aside. I love art. Anybody who knows me knows I love art. And this picture to the side is microscopic art or scientific art. People take pictures of things that are microscopic and that look really neat and make prints out of them. And I just thought this was kind of cool. I use a lot of these in my PowerPoint, so you'll see random cool things every now and again. All experiments begin with a testable question. So pause the video right now and write this statement down. Now, you might be thinking, well, what do you mean by testable question? And I'm really glad you asked because I'm about to tell you. Testable question. Keep that in the back of your mind just a minute. So where do these questions come from? I mean, they got to come from somewhere, and I alluded to the fact that generally it's from a problem or an observation, but we really could boil this down into three main sections or three main categories of where these questions come from. First of all, it's things you've observed or wondered about. I mean, you're just laying around and you're watching something and it kind of piques your interest and you start being curious about it. Two, it's a topic that you're just interested in, something that you already like, not even wondering about it. You're just like, oh man, I love electricity. And so you start researching it, and then you come up with some really interested ways to research, or not research, but to experiment with, but hopefully you're going to be safe with that. Or you know what, honestly, let's just be honest, the last one, which is the most common one, it's something you're assigned. Now, this is the same, though, not just for students, but even for professional researchers or scientists. It's things that they're observing and wondering about, or it's something that they're interested in, or quite frankly, their employer says, hey, I need you to work on this project. So basically, they're assigned that project. So let's go back to the concept that the question has to be testable. What do we mean by testable in order to be a scientific question? I mean, we can ask questions all day long, but it doesn't mean there's something that we can test. So it has to meet three criteria. It has to be something that can be observed. Okay, so you have to be able to make observations on it. It has to be something that you can measure evidence on. And three, you have to be able to collect data on it. You know, like I said, we can sit and wonder about things all day long, and they might be really cool and even valid questions like, is there alien life form on another planet? That's a great question, and that would be a really valid and important answer to know at some point. But is it testable? Well, no, it's not. It's not something we can observe right now. With our capabilities, it's not something that we can measure evidence on, and we certainly can't collect data on it because we don't have the capabilities to go venture out to other planets to observe, measure, and collect data on that. Now, you may be thinking, all right, what about crop circles? I woke up last night and had a crop circle in my backyard. Okay, so that, some people may say, oh yeah, that's data, but the thing is we can't confirm that data. We just really cannot. It's arguable. And remember, for something to be a true observation or to be data, it has to be something we can't argue with. You know, other questions you might wonder about, hey, do ghosts really exist? And you say, I watched the Ghost Hunters. But again, that's questionable data, and it's something that we can argue about. So those aren't going to be testable questions. So They also can't be opinions. That's super important. You saw that already with observations. I mean, opinion just doesn't really have a place in scientific experiments and tests. All right, let's look at an example, and maybe that will clarify to you what I'm talking about testable. Let's look at a bad question first. So a bad question, which color of M&M tastes better? Okay, well, your key word in this sentence right away is the word better. That implies an opinion. Even if you asked people and you took surveys, well, you get a survey, but it's still their opinion. It's not a fact. So what would be a better one? A better one would be something you can collect data on and you can measure and observe, like will M&M color dissolve faster in water or vinegar? You could set the test up, you could get a stopwatch, and you could collect data on that no one could argue with. All right, let's try this one. Here's a topic, let's say. Dogs. Let's say you really like dogs. You're really interested in them. Well, here's a bad question. Which dog is smarter? I mean, that's subjective. A lot of people think their dog is really smart. So, yeah, my dog's smarter than yours because he can go fetch the newspaper. Well, someone else might say, well, that's really dumb. I don't care about a newspaper. My dog can round up sheep. He's smarter than yours. And then other people would say, well, who cares about that? That doesn't mean anything to me. I don't need sheep rounded up. My dog can pick up his own poop and bring me a coffee. So you see, we could sit and argue about what the definition or what the criteria is for smarter. So that's an opinion. So what could we do in testing a dog? Obviously, that's humane. We don't ever do anything that's cruel. What would be a good question we could test with dogs? Well, we could say, does the breed determine how fast a dog can run? And we could get dogs to run, and we could time them and collect data on them. Something with the idea of smarter is, does the breed determine how fast a dog will train? And we could train different breeds and compare the results. All right, how about this topic? Onions, okay? Well, here's a bad question. Which onion is better for cooking? Okay, well, you could argue that white onions are the best because you really like Mexican food. Someone else would say, oh no, that's horrible. I really like French food and I like the ones that are made with green onions. Well, my son would argue, no onions are good. They're all horrible. So again, that's going to be an opinion. So you would have to think of a question. If onions were your thing and that was your topic, you would have to think of a question that you could collect data on. Like, does the type of onion determine how many tears are produced when you're chopping them? Literally you could collect your tears that ran out of your tear ducts and weigh them or something. So again, it has to be testable, something you can actually collect data on. All right, how about this one? Plants. Which plant looks better in my bedroom? Again, that's that keyword better. That's an opinion. A really great question might be, do plants grow better with water or orange juice as their food source or liquid source? And then you could gather data and make up observations and such. Okay, now remember, a lot of times these will come from observations that you make. So I'm going to give you an observation that you quite possibly could make. And then we're going to go from there and see if we can develop a question. So here's your observation. My little brother was hyper last night during the karate movie. Okay, so you witnessed this. You're watching a karate movie with your family and your little brother is going nuts the whole time. So that gets you thinking. What I'd like for you to do right now is pause the movie and see if you can come up with a testable, remember, kind, we don't want to be mean to little brothers, test question that you could actually test on your little brother. Okay, so maybe you came up with something like this. Does the kind or type of movie my brother watches determine how hyper he is? You could collect data on that. You could show him different movies and make observations. How about this? Does the kind of food my brother eats before watching a movie affect how hyper he is? Maybe he had a bowl full of M&Ms before he watched that movie. Would he act differently if he ate a salad before? So there's a lot of options that are testable from that observation. All right. Next observation. My mom's candy melted in the car, but my dad's didn't. Okay, so your family goes to the mall for the day, and your parents leave their candy in the car, and when you come back out, mom's is melted and dad's isn't. So what is a testable question that you could actually develop a test around and get some data on? Why don't you pause the video right here and see if you can come up with something. All right, how about does the type of candy determine whether or not it will melt in the car? You could even think about location. Does the location in the car where the candy is placed determine whether or not it will melt? Maybe mom's was in the sun and dad's was underneath the seat in the shade. So again, those are some really great testable questions that you could get data on. All right, so having this lesson done, it's going to be homework time. You're going to have to come up with testable questions for various scenarios. You're also going to have on the other side reading questions that people have proposed and circle the one that is testable, and if it's not testable, either leave it alone or just put a single line through it.